So walk us through how you started Softlead, and then like what were some of the early challenges you faced, the early fuck ups. I think some of
Yeah.
those are the best lessons learned is like when you don't even know what you're doing yet.
Yeah.
You make every mistake.
I
So
always think
yeah.
I've made every mistake,
Yeah.
and then I find new ones
No,
to
I know.
make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's never ending, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, we're still doing that, of course.
Yeah.
So walk us through those
Okay.
early days, and when get us to the point where you were like, okay, I actually think this could be a substantial business. Like I'm onto something here. And
Yeah.
maybe that was immediately. But yeah,
It,
walk us through it.
it was, then it wasn't. And so Softly was born. So we had this CrossFit gym. We were CrossFit affiliated, but we did strongman. We had tons of other programs that we were doing. And guys at Marsoc that I was friends with kept getting injured doing other programs, and not even like the coaches programs at the unit. They're just doing whatever they want because you have that freedom in
Yep.
those units.
Mhm.
And I would try to get them to do our programs, and they're like, dude, I'm not doing CrossFit. I'm not going to write you CrossFit. So a friend of mine was like, why don't you start a sub company, call it like Soft Lead or something, and write programs for military guys? I was like, okay, cool. So we wrote two programs, a strength program and a stamina program. And then we quickly followed that with a selection prep program because there's a ton of ask for that. That's like one of the number one things you
Mhm.
guys get asked for. We wrote that. Built a website in my grandmother's basement on Christmas Eve and launched it January 1st. And the day that it launched, or the night that it launched, it did more business in that night than my gym was doing in a month. And so it was kind of like oh wow,
So that was the moment.
yeah,
You
that
said, "Oh
was
shit."
I literally said oh shit and couldn't believe it, and it was selling PDFs. And so I don't know why I always think this, but there's a phrase in my family, this too shall pass, and I say it when things are good and I say it when things are bad. But I think it's really important to say it when things are good too. Like
Mhm.
when it's really good and you're like on top of the world, just remember that's going to go away at some point too. And it's going to, may not go back to the worst ever, but you're not going to be on top of the world forever.
It's like
Anyway,
keeping it even keel, right?
yeah, exactly. So we started selling PDFs and business went up like gangbusters and then down like gangbusters. But our engagement in the social media world was through the roof. So
And what year was this?
that would have been 2015.
Okay.
So we launched January 1st, 2015, which seems to us probably like yesterday, but it was like 10 years ago,
Mhm.
basically. This is our 10th year in business, which is kind of a cool thing to say. Especially in like the fitness technology space where things are usually like a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
But so guys started giving away PDFs and we're like, that's a bad move. So we moved to a third party training app and we were doing really well with that. And it got to a point where the checks we were writing to pay for that app every month, we figured we could do our own thing and basically retain customer data better. So instead of pushing people to another website where we had no idea what happens, we could just have them on our website and go through that way. And so that was frankly a bit of a business decision more than like we really want our own app because developing an app is really expensive. It was much more expensive than we thought, much more challenging, took a lot longer. And
And did you bring on an investor at that point, or did you do that through just
we
self
kind of did. So
self-funding?
early in the company, we had a friend of mine at the time basically was like, hey, he was like a Wall Street guy. And he's like, you're going to need business help. And I was like, well, what business help? Like, I own a business already. I can balance a checkbook. He's like, it's going to get more complicated than that. For anybody listening, it does not get more complicated than a checkbook, basically ever. Like, the numbers have to math. So, anyway, we had him, and he, to his credit, really pushed us to build our own app. He's like, you have to scale this business aggressively. And I knew that I needed mentors in business because I was, a dumb Marine at that point. I had no clue what I was doing as far as trying to actually scale it. I probably didn't know what scale meant at the time. So, I did know what scale meant. I had a clothing company as well that failed. It was a Made in USA flannel company. I
Okay.
left that off my
Right on.
sheet. It went for like 2 years because we were like making stuff in the US sucks.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I know.
doing it 10 years ago sucked even more.
Yes.
It's gotten a little better lately. But so I'd learned some really hard lessons from losing a boatload of money in a failed clothing company already.
Well,
Anyway,
I had a failed business right before Born Primitive too.
I
So I
love
think
it.
that's part of the journey, man.
Yeah,
you got to be willing to play a lot of hands.
So and I want to go down this rabbit hole because you guys said you wanted to hit the entrepreneurial stuff, but we after action that failure mercilessly. Like we sat down and like, why did we fail? And we went through the math, the market position, the marketing, everything that we were doing, the supply chain, all of it, and said, why did we fail? And then literally based on those failures, that's what I wrote the business plan for Softlead based on. So Softlead is infinitely scalable, which is great. Your customer acquisition cost is through the roof,
Yes.
but a Made in USA flannel company is not infinitely scalable. It is very capital intensive. It is a very challenging business to run. So hats off to anybody that's doing that. And I hope they're doing well with it, but it is very hard.
Yeah. What were some of your biggest takeaways as you sat down and kind of did a scope on what had went wrong versus what you then integrated into Softlead? What were some of the bigger takeaways you can
My
remember?
favorite takeaway was that aside from the business lessons of scalability and all that, is that you cannot be everything to everybody. And you are who you are. So one of the things as we tried to grow is like we started to peel back some of the like specifically gun culture things that we were doing, not because we became anti-gun, but because we were getting throttled by algorithms. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to open up our customer base. We're going to quit doing, AR-15 photo shoots. And that company kind of lost its identity and went into a direction that I did not want, that I have fought like mercilessly and softly to be like, no, we are a tactical fitness company. Until every guy in the military and every cop is doing Softlead, we have market share that we can gain there. That is who we are. If we're going to do something else, that's a whole other company, but we're not watering down our brand. Like we're very apologetic about that. We don't touch any politics. And the reason we don't touch politics is because I served under both Democrat and Republican presidents, and you work for who you work for in all government service. So
that's commander in chief.
Yeah, it's like we just don't touch that. We don't touch politics. We believe in gun rights and we can do that, but also we have a tactical demographic. They've got to shoot guns. Like you find the craziest left-wing person on the planet and say, should the military have guns? Unless they're actually crazy, they're going to say yes, right? So anyway, that was the lesson learned, was that you are who you are. And if you try to be all things to everybody, you're nothing. And so that was my biggest takeaway. It was like, just define who you are, what you do, and stick to that.
That's a great lesson. Yeah. And for anyone looking to start a business, I would say write that down, put it on a Post-it note, because that's so true.
100%.
We've had to, we've had to do the same thing. And it's like there's the tendency to try to speak to everyone, and by trying to speak to everyone, you're actually speaking to no one, because you're just going to get. It's a crowded space. No one's going to notice you. You got to be different, and you got to be right. And if you do those two things, you'll be onto something good.
Yeah. And if you're not different and you're not right, then you shouldn't succeed anyway, right? Otherwise you would just be doing the status quo, and you would, so.
Okay, so failed business. Love that.
Launched Softlead and started our own app. So we started our own app, was going exceptionally well, and we decided that we wanted to have supporting product lines like a sleep aid, protein, pre-workout, some apparel, because after having the failed apparel company, I was adamantly against apparel. We weren't even going to sell t-shirts with a Softlead logo. And then customers were making their own. They're like, if you guys don't make t-shirts, we're making
that's when you know.
That's a good sign of good brand strength there.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, well, we've got to make t-shirts, because I hate it. Like, I didn't want to be the guy that's like, I'm going to start a t-shirt company. Not a knock. Like, your business is your business. I just didn't want to do that, probably because of PTSD from the failed, apparel company. And so we started these supporting product lines, but really it was always about the training plans, the nutrition plans. We had a dry fire plan in the app, or still do, to help guys with firearms training. And it was about not the things, but the people, and making them as capable physically as we could, more so than the other products. And so we had them because it's cool and it's fun. And now I have a blast. Like, we just did a run of knives with a friend's knife company, and we're doing like wallet, and now it's become fun to do products. But for a long time, I was so like militantly focused on all we do is training plans that I basically pushed everything else to the wayside.